Hey guys, I'm gonna make a video about programming a simulator for our course discussion this week. I don't know if Mary has ever done a Gomard simulator, so I felt that this is pretty beneficial, especially current in the situation. Full disclaimer though, my kids are running around in the background, so you're probably gonna hear them. So I'm also using a work computer, so I'm just try to delete all kind of advertising that you see in the back, but Gomard simulators work on a Uni software, which kind of hangs out on your desktop. So just double clicking it will give you this pop-up window. In it, you can find all the simulators that are provided by our organization. So in this case, we have Noel, Hal, our pediatric Hal, 1-year-old, our super Tori, our newborn Tori, newborn Hal, and preemie Hal. With it, today I'm going to program Super Tori. I do not have it with me, so we're going to see how this works without it. So we're going to wait for it to load. You are able to program your mannequins without the mannequin nearby. It's a little bit of a tedious process because once you're done programming it, you're going to have to export the file in a USB drive and then use the mannequin tablet or the tablet with a RF module to transfer the file over. So that's the RF module. So when you kind of come in, I didn't set up any profile. So what I mean by a profile is essentially a way for you to create tabs in your computer system. So you don't have that many scenarios in place, but let's do a new scenario instead of loading an old scenario so you kind of see where it goes. So I'm going to click here on my scenario tab, which is right here in the corner. And in order for me to kind of start creating some scenarios, this is going to be a program scenario by time definitions. So one of our famous ones is going to be our NRP scenario, where my mannequin will essentially be born with complications due to a traumatic event. And this is a scenario that's used for interprofessional education. So we usually have nurses and RTs coming in here. My neonatologist usually just wants a bradycardic patient that is born apneic at the time. So with it, as you can see here, Tori does have a lot of things going on with her. So you'll have your head, your airway, your breathing, your cardiac issues, your circulatory system, as well as your bowels that you can control with Tori by itself. I am pretty used to going head to toe when it comes to programming the mannequins. It kind of helps me get a general idea of what steps I have to cover and what I have to modify. Now, when I'm running the simulators, if I'm running them on the fly, if you see right here in the corner, there's a little star that you can hook, and that's going to be kind of like your favorites. So for Tori, one of my favorite things about her is going to be her skin appearance. So I'll star her skin appearance because it's just easy to go back and forth. If I want to make her cyanotic, you can go back and forth to make it a quick tab. But that's for another conversation. So let's say we're gonna program Tori not on the fly, we're gonna physically have a scenario for her, and Tori is supposed to be apneic with a pulse of 80. We're gonna make her blue. She's not gonna be moved. So we're gonna go down the list, and the first thing that I want to do for this kind of scenario is gonna be close her eyes because she's just born. She's going to be limp, so you can see here that you can make Tori limp. She can move just her arms or her legs or do both. She can be fully active, only on one side, and she can also have seizures or be jittery. I'm not messing with her fontanelle, so I'm going to leave that normal. Mouth movement is going to be relaxed because she was just born, and we want to make sure she's as limp as possible. And then skin appearance for this is going to be very important because if a patient's born apneic, obviously her saturations are not going to be that great. So we want to make sure that she's as blue as possible. Our goal in simulation operations is to make sure that we make this mannequin as realistic as possible. And sometimes, adding that blue discoloration doesn't look that realistic, but it kind of gives them the idea of where they're going from. We don't want her to cry, so our crying is off. We want her to be apneic once again, so we're going to turn off her lung sounds over here. Normal respiratory pattern, I'm not turning that on. And then right here where it says respiratory rate, we don't want her to breathe, so we're going to go with 0. So we're just going to set that in there. And let's say 67 for her initial saturations. I'll do pre-ductal and post-ductal with Tori to make sure that if the learners put both of the SpO2, it's there. EtCO2 is very interesting because this is something that I'm really interested to go into the community and figure this out, how people are doing it, because we won't turn it on unless they intubate the patient and they request it. So it's not something that we pre-program, and then if you guys know how to do this would be great. We actually run into the simulation room, we cover our faces, and then click on the button on the monitor to make sure that it turns on, because we haven't figured out a way to do it otherwise without having that flat line, because we don't want the learners to get a hint that they have their CO2 monitoring. Usually we do another type of cue, whether we have our neonatologist come in and ask for that reading, or an RT or a facility RT will put it out there. Lung sounds, if you turn off her chest, she's not going to have lung sounds, so you don't have to worry about having to physically put that in there. And then with her, I want her to be 80, because by NRP standards, that's a baby that's born at a pulse of 80 is not good. Lowering her blood pressure is a big hint for me, so we'll go about 30 to 15. Cap refill, we're gonna make that delay as well. So let's do a cap refill of 5. So, and then here, this is what they call a stage or a palette. So you can save this palette, let's say NRP birth. I am not very descriptive with my palettes, and I gotta get better at that, only because I'm usually the ones running the simulator, nobody else. But this is a great place to put essentially like all the information that you want for your technician or your other operations specialist. So you could put like item description of baseline. So the information that I would like here would be like your heart rate, your SpO2. So if people go back and they're reviewing your scenario, they can when they ask you, what are you doing? You don't have to pull out all these things. So let's say this is her critical stage. Should we save? Once again, you kind of see that everything's been saved. So you can go here, and these are, this is once again your scenario palette. So if you click here and add node, that's so you can add another stage, and we're gonna add item instead. So these are all pre-programmed by the manufacturer, which is great. So as you can see, they already have NRP stages as well, but we're gonna do NRP birth, which is the one that we called. And we're gonna add. So that's like the most basic one. If you want the simulator to stay at this stage for as long as possible, what we like to add is wait indefinitely. So it just pretty much means that no matter what they do, the simulator is going to wait for it to happen until you tell it otherwise, which is great. So let's say with what we've learned before about unfolding scenario, instead of a stage scenario. So with unfolding scenarios, we can add paths. So by adding a path, let's say if the learners do an assessment and they intubate, they will go to stage 2. And stage 2, we're gonna create it to be let's say stage 2, the patient's gonna get better. But let's say that your goal is not to get the patient to get better. So you have an add node over here in the bottom, and you go over here in the corner where it's the same thing, the pallets, and let's say no intubation. 3 minutes. Or no PPV, which is probably what we want them to do in PALS. So let's in NRP. So let's delete that because that's not probably good. No PPV. Then let's say we're gonna say this is gonna take me to node 3. So when you build node 2, essentially your palette is going to be a positive palette because the patient's gonna get better. But if they don't do PPV, then we can build a palette where your mannequin actually gets worse. So we can decrease the heart rate, decrease the SpO2, decrease the blood pressure, or just put the patient in a systole. So that's essentially how I program my mannequins. Once you're done, you can hit the save button right up here in the corner. I'm not gonna do that because I don't want to save this in my work computer. So the next question that came up, which I'm gonna actually pull up ours, is actually discuss the differences between programming, automatic mode, and on-the-fly simulations. So I just kind of talked to you guys about programming. I am gonna type up automatic mode because I kind of know what that is, but I think I need more APA citations for that. And I'm gonna talk to you about on-the-fly simulations. For on-the-fly simulations, is pretty much essentially it's done without a programming. Nothing's planned. You kind of know where the route is going, and you kind of go from there. Keeping with the topic of NRP, I like to do on-the-fly simulations personally because I have worked with my neonatologist for so long. It's gotten to the point where I don't even know where she's gonna go. So she can come in and says we're gonna do we're gonna do our usual case. So I'm like, okay, cool. So this is me already doing everything on the spot. Patient's gonna go to 0. Let's do 67%. This is gonna go 30/60 right here in the corner. And then you click down, and the simulator is automatically gonna do that. That is essentially on the fly. It's unstructured. The mannequin isn't gonna do things on its own. So I am gonna review automatic, but from my understanding of automatic is when you put a timer on your scenario on your pallets, so it's gonna do it on its own. So right here you see these numbers right here, that's what we call the transition time. So I can easily when I go add item, let's say right here I can cancel this, and when I add I can choose to put this stage for 5 minutes, and then whatever I plan on the bottom, it's going to transition to that stage after 5 minutes. So the mannequin can literally be turned on and just let it do its own thing, but mindful that without that human factor, you can't check your boxes for it to go to the stage that you want it to check. So I'm definitely going to do the research, but I figured I might as well verbalize what my understanding of it was, just to be, there's my cat, a little bit more familiar. So Mary, if you have any questions about GEMARD as far as programming them, I can try my best to help you out. I know that Professor Parsons is probably a better resource, but I kind of hope that this would give you a visual, at least from another perspective as well.